Nashville. I landed at 6:15 a.m., exhausted but relieved because that 8-month project in Dubai was finished, delivered on time, $4 million under budget. I thought I deserved the drive home and breakfast on the deck. But when I turned onto the final road, I slammed the brakes and the world went quiet. I stopped, looked, and the guest wing on the east side of my house was gone, like someone pressed delete. Not just wrecked, not even messy, it was simply gone. And the main lakeside mansion I'd poured money and time into was torn open, about a third of it demolished. I stepped out of the car and took a breath. The air smelled of concrete dust and cut lumber. That particular smell of a place a bulldozer just ripped through. There was a yellow slip taped to what was left of the front frame, a notice, delinquent HOA dues, unpaid 8 months, authorized demolition, signed by Karen Hollis. You'd expect they'd call me, verify something, at least email. But no, they called the wrecking crew. The first and biggest mistake was that nobody checked that I don't just own that house. Through my company, I own the land, every road, the lake, all 847 acres of the development. I bought the master deed in 2019. That means people here own their houses, the walls, the roof, the fixtures, but the land under those houses is mine. I'm the ground lessor. They lease the ground their homes sit on. And when the HOA system didn't match the corporate name on a dues payment to a property account, someone declared the house delinquent and sent in the machines. No call, no county record search, just demolition. I called my attorney, Richard Cole. He's handled this property since the acquisition. He answered on the second ring. "Tori, are you there?" "They demolished my house," I said. "He told me to stand still, don't touch anything, don't talk to the HOA. He'd be there in 2 hours." When he arrived, we walked through the rubble in silence. Broken tile I'd imported from Portugal, pieces of custom cabinetry I'd commissioned in Asheville, all of it strewn across the foundation my grandfather's generation poured. Richard looked around, unusually quiet, and finally said, "This is extraordinary. Legally, this could be willful destruction of private property. Criminal, potentially." I felt heat in my chest. I'd paid the dues, maintained this place, and someone had bulldozed it because the HOA couldn't match a corporate name in their receivables. Here's what happened in the clubhouse. The HOA, the Lakeview Heights Community Association, led by Karen, had treated the house as abandoned, and under an ordinance they applied authorized demolition. But when the HOA attorney opened the 2019 master deed, the room went quiet. I had bought the entire land package through Blackwood Capital Holdings, LLC. The land under every home, every road, even the clubhouse belonged to my company. Owners owned structures and leased land. That arrangement dated back to the original developer, Harold Whitfield, in 1962. 2 board members had already resigned in protest before the demolition, Robert Marsh and Patricia Walsh. They'd warned against it. They'd told Karen not to proceed. They had written objections, but a majority pushed it through anyway. When Richard sent the demand letter for $6 million, the cost to replace the guest wing repair, the main house compensate for lost value and loss of use, the panic started. The HOA had about $380,000 in reserves, a drop in the bucket. I didn't just want a payout. If I settled quietly, the message would become, you can destroy the ground lessor's property and get away with it. I wasn't going to send that signal. Instead, we used the ground lease itself, a clause from 1962 that allows termination for material breach as leverage. I served notices to Karen and each board member who voted for the demolition. We were formally reviewing their ground leases for material breach because they authorized demolition of property owned by the ground lessor. That notice is the twist. A few calls later, the community Facebook feed was aflame. People were scared. Do I own the land under my house? Mortgage holders started wondering if loans would be called. The HOA membership meeting turned into a 3-hour confrontation. Residents demanded answers Karen couldn't give. A petition for Karen's resignation gathered signatures in the hundreds. Karen sued. She argued HOA bylaws and years of governance somehow trumped property rights. But the judge, Warren Holloway, read Section 14, Paragraph 3 of the ground lease. Any action by the HOA or its agents that damages ground lessor property can be a material breach. He denied the HOA's request to enjoin the lease review. He ordered a damages hearing. When the ruling came, it was clear the HOA had no authority to demolish structures on land it didn't own, and the HOA failed to perform basic due diligence. The judgment $6 million compensatory plus punitive damages against Karen personally. That judgment changed everything. The reserves were seized, $380,000 went to partial satisfaction, and Karen's personal liability pushed her toward bankruptcy. Her lender called her mortgage. Without a valid ground lease, the collateral's value collapsed. She ended up listing her house as structure-only land not included and took a paltry offer from a demolition salvage buyer. She moved out quietly. I wasn't trying to ruin anyone's life for sport. I enforced the contract. People who voted because they trusted a president who didn't check the records had to face consequences. But I also offered a way back for those who'd acted without malice. I proposed a settlement public acknowledgement of the error cooperation with investigations and a reduced personal contribution $85,000 each to preserve their leases. 5 accepted. 1 fought and later settled for a bit more. The HOA, crippled by the judgment and operational paralysis, dissolved. The homeowners who had nothing to do with the demolition, most of the community formed a negotiating committee. They asked for clarity and fairness, new ground lease documents, disclosure at every sale, plain language summaries, and an annual meeting with the ground lessor. We negotiated in good faith. They produced a 40-page proposal. I agreed to negotiate honestly. We rebuilt. I hired Ashworth Construction. The project manager, Dale Whitmore, said, "We can restore it exactly." I told him I didn't want the exact old version, I wanted better. We expanded the guest wing from 2,400 to 3,200 square feet, same language, more presence. By October, the new framing rose, and by November, the mansion looked like it had always been that size. The final chapter, a new HOA, new governing documents that clearly spelled out what homeowners own and what they lease, clear procedures for any enforcement, disclosure requirements, and an annual transparency meeting. The community mostly recovered values normalized once people stopped guessing and started knowing. Clarity turned out to be worth more than the previous comfortable ambiguity. So here's the takeaway. Quiet, contractual, and sharp, small displays of authority used without responsibility can wreck lives. Check records, read the fine print, ask questions. If you're in a position of power, exercise it only after you've verified facts. And if you're living under agreements you never read, ask to see them. It's not about vengeance. It's about enforcing the rules everyone agreed to. Tell me, do you think the law should have intervened sooner to stop the demolition? Would you have done the same as I did, or would you have settled quietly for the money and moved on? Share your take or a story if something like this has ever happened to you.